Welcome to the NDIS Property Australia podcast. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Welcome to today's episode. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge that today's topic may be sensitive to some listeners. We will be delving into the Kennedy versus NDIA case and the implications from the outcome. Let's begin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the NDIS Property Australia podcast. You're here with Emelitta from the office, and I am here with Dante from Adapt Housing.
Hi, Emelitta. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good.
So right now we're sitting in Adapt headquarters. We're in Adapt headquarters right now. And this is part 2 of our episode series. So part 1 was episode 10 of the podcast that you're currently listening to. And part 1 was all about the NDIS application process, the SDA application process, funding outcomes, and a bit about the appeal process. But today we're going to go a little bit deeper into more of a case study. So we're going to be focusing on the case Kennedy versus the NDIA, which is actually a really important case for NDIS participants who are seeking funding. So yeah, Dante, would you like to just give anyone who hasn't listened to episode 10 just a brief overview of who you are, what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I suppose really quickly, I work for Adapt Housing. So Adapt, we're based here in Brisbane. We're an SDA provider. So we work with builders, participants, care providers all across Australia to help try and find purpose-built and suitable accommodation for participants on the SDA. So yeah, I suppose it's really good, and I'm happy to be here and happy to talk about this momentous case that was, really great, I suppose, the outcome in the end, and it was an important one. It was definitely good to see the outcome that came of it.
Brilliant. All right, so before we go into discussing the case, in our previous episode, we spoke about the application process for NDIS participants to get SDA funding. So if you haven't already checked that out, those who are listening, do check out that episode because it goes really deep into that. It does seem like a very in-depth process where a lot of, proving why you need that funding is required. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, for sure. It really coincides with their goals that are outlined in their plan, and also the housing report that's, has their goals laid out in it of what they wish to achieve by getting SDA in their plan.
Brilliant. Okay, well, this case definitely illustrates that to whoever is listening. All right, so do you want to give us an overview of what this case was about?
Yeah, of course. So it was a gentleman down in Victoria who was approved for shared funding, so house funding, which was, around that $40,000 mark. And basically what that meant was the NDIA, after he went through the process of applying for SDA, he outlined his goals and his needs and just exactly what he wishes to get out of SDA. And that was to be able to have that greater independence, to be able to see his 2 children, have shared custody, work from home, all the things that a man wishes to do and be able to do in the privacy of his own home. The NDIA turned around and said, well, no, you can actually share with another individual in a house setting. So, it was distressing and it was hard on him. And he decided to go down the process of fighting and appealing this, which is, I suppose, what we're talking about today and the process that is that. So it's not an easy process. It's tough. It's long, it can be upwards of 12 months, this process, but, he's persevered and luckily the tribunal and the independent body that assess these court cases have seen, I suppose, past the NDIA's funding allocation and realised that, he is an independent, he's got children, he needs the extra room, he needs the space, he needs the privacy, and therefore they've awarded him what he originally applied for.
Yeah, amazing. And regarding this person's specific circumstances, you already touched on some of it, but what I understand is he got approved initially for the 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom sharing with another person in a house. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then what he actually wanted was a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom like apartment living by himself?
Yeah, so they call it a 2-bedroom, 1-resident apartment setting. So whereas obviously he was funded for a 2-bedroom, 2-resident house funding amount.
Okay. So essentially what he wanted was to have 1 bedroom to sleep in and then another bedroom for certain reasons, which let's talk about the reason. So what was this person's specific circumstances that had him requiring this level of funding, this extra bedroom?
So his main, I suppose, argument behind needing the second bedroom was, well, one of the 2 main ones was, he was active in the community in terms of he's an Indigenous First Nations gentleman who was part of the Stolen Generation. So he does a lot of work for the local communities in that sense. And he's also got 2 children that he wanted the second bedroom, I suppose, to be able to have shared custody, to be able to see his kids more, because the current living arrangements and the arrangements that have been funded by the NDIA really limited, if not prevented him from being able to see his children in the setting that is most suitable for him.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. So what was the rationale behind the NDIA's decision not to provide that level of funding to him?
So one of the biggest things was they always try and justify why it is you need that second bedroom. So across the few years that ADAPT's been operating, we've come across a very, very limited number of individuals who have been approved for that 2-bedroom, 1-resident apartment funding. It's the highest that you can get in terms of the price guide. And really, out of the individuals that we've seen, they've either been lawyers who have had an accident, or they run their own successful business. They're New York best time seller authors. So I suppose in the eyes of the NDIA, they're always trying to look at the reasoning behind why do you need that second bedroom.
Yeah.
And in the cases, they looked at these individuals who used it for work, and they go, well, in a way, they could almost justify paying for that additional room. So really, really crucial thing that they used, I suppose, as a resistance against the applicant's claim was a clause. It's called Clause 85 or Appendix G. So in there it says, shared living arrangements, including people who are not eligible, the NDIA can really be paying for the second bedroom. So they're contending that an SDA in a single bedroom can live in a one bedroom apartment rather than the 2, because at the end of the day, they end up trying to settle early and saying, well, okay, how about a 1 bedroom? But he said, no, I still need the second bedroom. This is for my family, this is for me to see my kids. Little to not realize that, the children can't pay rent for this second room.
Can you clarify that bit again, that clause G? Can you, because I'm still catching up with that. So what does that mean? Like, can you, very simple terms.
Yeah, so Appendix G, it's on a case-by-case, but in short, it means that the person who is not an SDA eligible participant must make a contribution of the cost of the second bedroom.
Understood. Okay, yes, I remember now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, to clarify for anybody, for those who are listening, one of the main reasons that he wanted the second bedroom was, of course, to have shared custody as his children, as we've said. And then now the NDIA have said, well, the second bedroom, people who live in there would need to pay for it. And then the tribunal's gone back and said, well, how are 2 children meant to pay for the room? Okay,
So they've tried to settle on a 1-bedroom, 1-resident apartment. Lower funding, but that second bedroom, the tribunal's gone, well, no, kids can't pay rent.
Absolutely.
So that's where they've kind of been. So the tribunal agreed with the applicants contesting, saying that I can't expect my children to pay rent for the second bedroom. So,
of course,
and that's what it is. It's shared living arrangements with people who are not SDA eligible. So some scenarios we have participants on the SDA, but then they have a family member who will stay in the second bedroom, but will pay, an additional reasonable rent sort of arrangement. That's all case by case. But really he justified that this additional bedroom was for his children to be able to come and stay, and for him to work out of it as well.
Yeah. So I want to go deeper into the rationale behind the tribunal's decision to grant him that 1 participant, 2-bedroom apartment. But before that, was there any other rationale behind the NDIA's decision not to, other than what we've already stated, that Appendix G?
Cost cutting as well, I suppose. In terms of the SDA funding, the government have, in terms of an approved budget, of $700 million. However, they're only spending about $200 million. It's budgetary constraints that they're facing at the moment, just due to other funding allocations within the NDIS. So, we've heard comments adapt from NDIA and all that, stating that they're not giving out these one-to-one fundings. They're not approving them as regularly at the moment. It's a lot of shared funding. So, just pretty much using from their end what they've told us and what the market's looking like. That seems to be where they were heading. But, you know, this tribunal case is momentous, and it could be a turning point in the space.
Absolutely. Momentous.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about what the rationale behind the tribunal's decision was. So we've already spoken about, you know, the fact that the children aren't going to be able to pay for the room, obviously. What other reasons were there?
Well, I suppose if you look at who the tribunal are, so they're an independent body that, you know, they act on behalf of the people. Yeah. Really, in this court case, it was the NDIA versus the people being, you know, the SDA participants. And the tribunal always going to look at it not necessarily from a monetary value, and certainly not from the eyes of the NDIA. They hear it from the NDIA's perspective, but they also hear it from the participants' perspective.
Absolutely.
We hear a lot of stories and a lot of cases where, you know, and the NDIA have said that the SDA scheme is not set up for families, really.
Right.
It's set up for independent individuals. Yes, may have a family, but unfortunately, they're not taken into consideration to an extent when they're providing this funding.
Yeah.
So it's really hard. Like a house setting, house one resident doesn't exist. House two residents, really your minimum. So, you know, a gentleman who has a family, you know, has a wife, has 2 kids, has a dog, but it gets funded for house 3 residents. Well, you know, that's not practical for him to live with his family in a house with 2 other individuals.
Absolutely.
So, you know, they go through the tribunal process and they try and get this higher funding amount so that they can potentially use it and apply it. So at ADAPT, I suppose what we do is we work closely with investors as well as participants who have this funding amount to try and flexibly apply it in various scenarios. So, you know, there might be a duplex available. That's 2-3 bedroom duplex. You know, obviously that's a funding amount for 2 participants, fully funded. However, this participant who's got a higher amount of funding, we can actually apply to the lesser of the 2 amounts, being the enrolled value of the dwelling and the funding amount of the participant. And when we can sort of negotiate with the investor to go, hey, this is their funding amount. They've got a family. You know, is this something that you'll consider just as the one participant moving in with his family? Yeah. The wife, again, could sometimes pay an additional reasonable rent if she's working. But if she, you know, it's really a case by case. Another property we're just working with at the moment, they're not money driven in any sense. So they've built an improved livability home and they've said to us, listen, you know, we're about to go, we're moving out, we're going somewhere else. All we want in here is just a family.
Right.
We're happy with just a family. You know, just whoever's funded, it's great. But they're targeting really those individuals who have a family who can't find.
Nice.
So it's really, really nice to see and speak to individuals like that who, you know, consider it from their point of view. You know, you're being told by the government that you have to share with with strangers, other individuals, when really, you know, some people are happy to, don't get me wrong. Like we've got participants who want to share, you know, they're young, they want to interact, they want to socialize.
Absolutely.
But those who are a little bit older and, you know, they want that independence, they want that privacy. So it's hard when the government turns around and says, well, no, you've still got to share with other strangers. So it's the kind of battles you face day in, day out.
Wow, there's a lot to it. And it sounds like this case this is why we're having the conversation, right? Because this case is momentous, as you said. Yeah, well, let's keep going. Let's go into it a bit more, because what I understand is that there's a big emphasis on quality of life, right? Inclusion in the community, you know, living life, you know, as close to, what's the word here? Like,
well, allied health and, you know, your community access and.
But in terms of like living a life that, you know, one of the reasons behind, you know, this support and the NDIS, is it the plan? The plan?
Oh, I suppose, is to integrate within the community.
Exactly. Integrate within the community and live as close to a normal life as possible, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that, you know, the NDIA, it seems like it's set up for that, like people who live in share housing, the current structure. Am I hearing you right? Yeah,
well, it was created off the back of a lot of what they're called, well, it's now called legacy stock. So these were your group homes of 5-6 residents.
Gotcha.
So those participants, a lot of them have been living in these group homes that are 5 to 6 participants, and they're going to hopefully be grandfathered across. It's still a while away, those participants, but that was the intention, to get these people out of these institutional-like houses and give them that greater options and flexibility. And really the key phrase that the NDIA use is choice and control.
Choice and control.
And that's what, you know, another big argument or point that was made in this case is choice and control. Where is the choice and control for this individual to choose where he lives if he's been restricted by this funding amount?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So there was other parts to it. So the impact if he didn't get that outcome. I have some things listed, but, I want to hear from you. What do you think? Like, he obviously would have had a lot of trouble trying to have a relationship with his two children.
Oh, it would have been stressful, no doubt.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine what the outcome would have been if it was, at the other end of the scale. And it's, really, I could only imagine the stress just alone the process would have put him through. And if he were to be knocked back, he definitely seems like the gentleman who wouldn't have given up fighting. That's for sure. He seems, he's strong. He's strong-minded really too. So he would have kept fighting. And, in our sense, I suppose from a dad, we would have worked closely along with the likes of Greg Barry and all that, who was doing the appeal, but working closely with them to find some sort of accommodation. Because that's the other thing, we work closely with the investors to, I suppose, say, accept the participants on a lower amount of funding with the intention that they're going through the appeal, that they're going to get that higher amount of funding. So, it's that flexibility again between working with participants and the investors of these properties that they wish to live in.
Yeah, for sure. And understand part of his, is it called a care plan, an NDIS care plan? What's the terminology for that? So in terms of how to improve their quality of life?
So just, their NDIS plan.
NDIS plan. Yeah, so one of the major things to assist this gentleman was to have the relationship with his children, also the space for him to set up a computer to be a mentor in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, and as well as storage for his wheelchairs, physiotherapy equipment, and then space for carers who need to stay overnight. So I'm pretty sure that was another big part of why the tribunal said, well, it makes sense to have that extra
Yeah, because if he's deteriorating as well over the next few years and, if it's a degenerative condition, they need to be able to provide the care on site overnight, 24/7.
Yeah, so I suppose if he didn't get that outcome, that would have majorly impacted his quality of life.
For sure. Yeah. It would have had a detrimental impact on the cares that he needed.
Absolutely, yeah. So why is this appeal so important as a precedent? So how does it relate to challenges that participants have faced with obtaining suitable funding?
I suppose in a way it provides hope that it is doable. As mentioned earlier, it's a long process and it is stressful, but those who persevere and those who stick by it and through the process, they're coming out on top that we're seeing. There is a lot of pushback by the NDIA and there's a lot of resistance by them to allow this funding amount, but again, if they want to stick by their terms, they're saying of choice and control, then the participants, of course, are going to fight for that choice and control. So it's a precedent that's been set that we're hoping sees a turn in the number of participants regaining hope, because we speak to a lot of participants day in, day out who receive a low amount of funding. And, only a small handful actually decide to go through with this process just based on how, the process that they've already gone through to get SDA in their plan. For some of these individuals who weren't even on the NDIS, it's upwards of 2 years.
Wow. So, is that including the tribunal?
No, not even including the tribunal. Wow. So just to become, there's almost a wait list to get onto the NDIS. Once you become an NDIS member, then you have to again apply for SDA. So by the time you're at that point, it could be 2 years, and then you've got to go through potentially another 12 months if you're not getting the outcome that's going to be best suited. So we're seeing a lot just accept their funding and see what they can get with it. We've seen participants who have just ended up having to stay where they are, if it's in Department of Housing, aged care facilities, it's horrible, but some just, it's difficult on them. So you can't push them any more than they've already gone through.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing is that the tribunals generally turn out positively, but there is a really hard process to get there. Is that?
Yeah. So generally what we're seeing positive outcomes from the tribunal, but again, it's still very little data just based on how few have gone through and completed the process. And we know a lot of individuals going through the process, but those who've actually received an outcome, it's been very few to kind of collect substantial data. But from what we have seen, similar to this case, that the outcome has been positive and it has been worthwhile their time. It's just those who stick by and persevere.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think we've already sort of spoke about it, but now that participants have this case as a precedent, do you think that will contribute to more positive outcome in the future with relation to funding applications even?
There is a chance that obviously this will be a turning point. As mentioned, it'll be hope to a lot of these participants to see that, it's doable. It's been done. It can be done. And I have no doubt that many lawyers representing participants going through the process will have their hands all over this court case, and we'll be pulling it to pieces and seeing what they did, how they did it, what they said. And yeah, I definitely think that this will be a key factor for the next few months in terms of those going through the tribunal and the process. And yeah, hopefully we see more positive outcomes like this one.
Yes, amazing. Yes, hope for the future, hope for the NDIS participants. Amazing. Thank you so much, Dante. Is there anything else that you'd like to cover before?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it all. But as mentioned, yeah, it's been amazing to see the outcome of this case, and do hope that it sets a good precedent and it really encaptures that whole choice of control and participants wanting to be able to be reintegrated, I suppose, or integrated into the community. So it's a really positive outcome, and look forward to reading and seeing a lot more of it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dante, and thank you everybody who's listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure that you are subscribed and following us so that you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this episode with those that can benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.